Okay, so Thruxton. This is really the second part of my how does the GH5 manage with fast motorsports. And in the first part of this, it didn't really, there was no real conclusion. It did okay, but I think it could do better. And this is where we now come to the Thruxton meeting for British Superbikes. And what were the results? Well, I took 1,359 images with the GH5 on the Friday, and having had a look through them now, I would say there are at least 74 that were very good. And that was better than I was expecting. It was a difficult start to the day in some respects, because whilst it was predicted to be very hot and sunny, when I got to the circuit and first thing in the morning, and in fact all morning, it was very overcast and pretty gloomy. The light was really quite poor. And here's the first shot that I took at the track. Thankfully that was not a kind of a precursor of things to come. Here's the second shot. These are just straight out of Cambridge JPEGs. And it took me a little while to just work into things, get my rhythm, find my good place in terms of panning and the like. And in fact, when I looked through them, my first good image, first half decent image anyway, is 30 frames, 30 shots in, and about 10 minutes. According to the clock on the camera, it took me about 10 minutes to get this first half decent picture. And this is at part of the circuit that's between Allard and Campbell. So it's a very, very fast kind of left-hand, slightly uphill sweeper. So it is a tricky place to take photos, although it is one of the first places I usually walk to at Thruxton. So it's a real challenge. And that's the first, my first few images. There were some good ones as well at that point, and equally some frustration. Sometimes you take an image which is dead sharp and at the right speed, etc., and you've only got half the bike in the frame. Such is life. So what had I done with the settings here? And the answer is that I was trying out the sensitivity, the AF sensitivities, and looking through the sets 1, 2, 3 and 4. I tried them all, and my best results came with set 1 and set 4. And towards later in the day, I switched so that I was using only set 4, and I tailored it slightly so that I had AF sensitivity was +2, switching sensitivity was 0, and motion predictability was +2. And I think that was best, but to be honest, it's quite difficult to tell what's, it is quite just difficult to tell what's better and what's not. And, from the whole of the morning, I got the impression that things weren't going very well at all. By lunchtime, I was a bit despondent, to be honest. And partly that's just reviewing things on the screen, on the camera, and thinking things weren't going that well. Now, it turns out that when I looked at these on the PC, actually things had been going much better than I thought. So you can't always tell just by looking up the small screen on the back of the camera. I was using the battery grip on this occasion to try and get a better feel, get a better grip on the camera, and I think that worked well. That definitely felt better in the hand. It felt more like the EM1X, which balances nicely in the hand. So that was good. And the way I'd set up my basic settings were that I set my ISO to 200, so not using auto ISO, and I then used aperture priority all day. And I used 3 different lenses because I wanted to try out the 100 to 300 to see if that could actually hack it in terms of motorsport. And what I found was that the 100 to 300, so the 3 lenses were the Panasonic Lumix 100 to 300, which is f4 to 5.6, the Olympus 40 to 150 f2.8, and the Olympus 300mm f4. And I also had the times 1.4 and times 2 converters. Can't use the converter with the 100 to 300. It's only for the other 2 lenses. And I did find that the autofocus on the 100 to 300 is a little bit slower than the autofocus on the other 2 lenses, and that's to be expected. I mean, it is a fraction of the price of the other 2. So the question is, could it still produce a decent image? And I think the answer is definitely yes. It can produce some good images, and I've got some examples as well. Walking around the circuit, after that fast section, you come to from Allard up to Campbell, there's the fast section, and then at Campbell, that's kind of the entry to the complex. And that's a really good place to view and to photograph. And I think I've got some really good shots there. After that, I made my way further out away from the start line, towards Cobb and Seagrave. And at that point in the circuit, you are quite a long way from the bikes, but it is still possible to get some good shots there. But not only are you a long way from the bikes at that point, you're also forced to shoot through the wire fencing. And because it's such a long way from the bikes, I was tending to use the 300mm with the times 1.4 converter, which reduces the contrast a little, and then you're shooting through the wire fence as well, and that tends to drop your contrast a little bit further as well. So here's 1 or 2 examples where you can see the straight out of camera JPEG and something that's adjusted for contrast. So it's pretty tricky. It's pretty challenging at that particular point in the circuit, but I did try the 100 to 300 as well at that point. And you just need to crop a bit further, but it did okay. It didn't do bad at all. At lunchtime, the sun came out amazingly, and the afternoon got really hot and sunny. So I made my way round to the new viewing area it's called Woodham Hill, they've called it, and they've done quite a lot of work at Thruxton. I wasn't sure when I got to the new viewing area whether it was going to be any good or not. And you're kind of looking down on the bikes as they come off of the far end of the circuit. They're going pretty fast, and they're coming up towards the club chicane. I took a few images there, and actually it was better than I expected. They've made a big effort at this new viewing area. They had some food vendors there. They had a bar there. They had some Portaloo toilets there. They've tried hard at the new viewing area. Lots of new fence to lean on, wooden fencing, but it's banked up really high, so you've got no fencing. You've got to look through to see the bikes, which is good. And they've got lots of picnic tables and all that sort of stuff. So it's actually pretty, I thought they've made a good effort there, and it's good to see. And I enjoyed actually watching the bikes there. There was lots of people there just sitting around chatting at the picnic tables and the like, just enjoying themselves in the sun. So that was good. Good effort from Thruxton there on the new viewing area. So, what do I think are the best shots from the meeting? Given that my hit rate is better than expected, Pictures from the meeting, I think there are two that were really quite good. One from the new viewing area, which I really liked, which is of Scott Redding going in towards the club chicane. I was well pleased with that. And that's with the 40 to 150, I think. And also at Cobb, which is the area almost completely opposite the new viewing area, which I was saying is, you know, you're shooting through wire and it's a long way off, blah, blah, blah. And that's Luke Hedger. And that's just, I think that's a kind of it just feels like a good action shot, like he's really trying at that point. So the Superbike's delivered in terms of good images, and I think the GH5 did a lot better than I was expecting, and I still don't think it was these shots came as easily as they do with the EM1X or the EM1 Mark II, but it just shows that with a camera that's not ideal for that particular circumstance, and even with that 100 to 300 lens, which in the scheme of things isn't hugely expensive, you can still get some pretty decent images. And I guess the only, you know, you're just working around one or two little drawbacks. You know, that lens is a little bit on the slow side in terms of its autofocus. Obviously its aperture is a little bit restricted, but then I don't tend to use the lenses wide open anyway most of the time. I was using burst mode and I didn't notice any blackout in the viewfinder this time. Maybe I was getting used to it, or maybe I imagined that the first time. I did notice that using continuous autofocus, when it actually, I was using back button focus, and when it actually locked focus, there was a very slight jump in the viewfinder, which was it can be a little bit off-putting, but you kind of get used to it, and it's just a momentary jump as it locks focus. So that's quite interesting, and I can remember that being a bit of an issue when I had the original Mark I EM1. It used to do that. I mean, it's okay, you get used to it, but it's not ideal. But you know, such is life. The bike, I still think, did really good. So the camera, I still think did really good. So yeah, well pleased with that. I mean, I did take the GH5 only. I left the EM1X behind, so I was, you know, going to make the most of it regardless, whatever happened, and I'm glad to say it all turned out well. Next meeting, can't remember. Donington? Not sure what I'll do there. Probably the EM1X, I'm guessing.